Welcome back to another Refuge recap. Today we're starting a new series in the book of Esther. So let's jump right into the beginning of our story. Now I'm going to be paraphrasing a lot here rather than reading it all, but I of course recommend that you go ahead and read the passage in its entirety for yourself. Our story begins in the palace of King Xerxes, the king of Persia at the time. He was probably the most powerful person during this era, and he decided that he was going to throw a party. A massive 6-month party that was pretty much the epitome of extravagance and overabundance. And the whole point of it was for King Xerxes to show off. But he wasn't satisfied with just proving that he was the wealthiest man. He wanted to show off everything else that he had too. So in Esther chapter 1, verses 10 through 11, it says, "On the 7th day, when King Xerxes was in high spirits from wine, he commanded the 7 eunuchs who served him to bring before him Queen Vashti, wearing her royal crown, in order to display her beauty to the people and nobles, for she was lovely to look at. In his drunken state, he told his servants to bring out his wife and have her parade her beauty for everyone to gawk at her." Now we have to realize that this was a party full of drunken men. I'm sure that it doesn't take too much of an imagination to realize that this situation could have gone sideways in any number of ways. So in verse 12, we read that Queen Vashti refused the order. She refused to be paraded in front of a bunch of drunken men at her husband's party, and this made King Xerxes very angry. So does he do the reasonable thing and go and talk to his wife about this and try to clear things up? Of course not. He turns to his advisors and asks them what he should do with his wife who just disobeyed him. Their solution was to banish Queen Vashti and replace her with someone better. So once the king sobers up, he has a moment where he thinks about Vashti and everything that happened. Now, it doesn't necessarily say this in the Bible, but it's easy to imagine that King Xerxes probably had a moment, at least one, of regret. Not only does the Bible tell us about Queen Vashti's beauty, but we can clearly see from her actions in the short passages that we read about her in the Bible that she was a woman who held herself in high regard and maintained her dignity no matter the cost. And that, right there, is what we're really pulling from the first part of this story. So Vashti is someone who gave up being queen and the wife of the wealthiest and most powerful man in the world so that she could retain her dignity. Her position as queen meant that she could have whatever she wanted: fine food, beautiful clothing, jewelry, literally anything. However, we see that she treasured her dignity and her self-worth more than all of that. So if Vashti can give up being one of the wealthiest people in the world to protect her honor and dignity, do you think that we could give up that high that we get from making a brash decision in a moment of peer pressure? That moment of pleasure that we know should only be shared between a husband and a wife? That opportunity that would mean sacrificing our morals and values just to get ourselves one step ahead. The strength that it must have taken Vashti to refuse Xerxes, knowing that her punishment for doing so would be incredibly severe, had to have come from God. And that is where we must look in those moments where we are faced with the difficult decisions to either do what is easy or to do what would bring honor and dignity to ourselves and to God. Some of you may be listening to this now and thinking about a time or 2 or 10 where you already made that decision to sell your honor or dignity for something that felt good at the time. If there is one thing for you to get out of this, it is this: God has forgiven you. There is nothing that you could have done and no number of times that you could have done it to make it so God won't forgive you. You are forgiven. All we have to do is believe in Jesus and his saving work on the cross, and all of our sins and past failures will be washed clean. So God has already forgiven you. Now the question that we have to ask next is, have we forgiven ourselves? Even though God's love for us is unending, sometimes when we have sold our honor or dignity, it is hard for us to forgive ourselves for those moments. However, once something is done, know that it can't be undone. Once the bone is broken, it cannot be unbroken. It can only be healed. So take some time to allow yourself to heal. Take some time to allow God's forgiveness of you to influence your forgiveness of yourself. You are holy and perfect in the eyes of God, so ask him for help to see yourself in that way too. For the next several weeks, we're going to be continuing with the story told in the book of Esther. And Vashti certainly isn't the last incredible and strong female character that we're going to see. So we hope to see you back here next week for another Refuge recap. Have a great week, and God bless.